In this video, we'll consider things like where your plots get printed and how to export your final plots so they can be saved, shared, or even published. R is really good for this because it's able to render figures that are high quality and publication ready. Often we don't think too much about where a plot gets printed since it just happens. Every R session has a default for what's called the graphical device, and when you create a plot, that's where it shows up. This default is part of a list of global options that are set in each R session. This is a list kind of like the list of graphical parameters that can be accessed with the par function that we've looked at in several earlier videos. We can view these global options with the options function, and like with par, we see a long list of options with their defaults. I've scrolled way up here, and for example, I see one for digits. This defines the number of significant digits that are displayed. But the one we'll focus on here is the device, just a couple items above the digits entry. I'm using RStudio, so my default device, or graphical device, is set as RStudio GD, or RStudio Graphical Device, which just means that by default, when I create a plot, it's going to be printed in one of the windows within my RStudio session. If you're not working in RStudio, this default will be something else. Sometimes the plot will open in a new window. Regardless, this option defines where, by default, your plots get printed. I'm generating a small data set here that I can use to create a simple histogram with the hist function that we've used in earlier videos. And it's easy enough to save this plot by using the export drop-down button above the plot and saving it just like you'd save a typical file in another program. Here we have options to save it either as an image file. From there you can choose different types of files like JPEGs or TIFFs. Or separately, we could choose to save it as a PDF. So this works if you're working interactively, but it might not work in other cases. For example, let's say you want to create a plot as part of a script that you won't be running interactively. Or maybe you'll be creating a large number of individual plots in sequence, and you don't want to go through and save each one individually. An alternative is to direct the plot to a different graphical device before generating it. You can access a list of available devices with question mark devices. And scrolling down through this help document, there are a number of options. Some, like PDF, JPEG, and TIFF, are more familiar, at least to me, than others. But we can choose one of these devices to set as our graphical device, overriding the default. I'll try PDF here. Just for clarity, I'll delete the plot I made earlier, and I'm also going to check my working directory. It's a directory named printing_plots on my desktop. I'll open that directory now and we see that it's empty. Now I'll start with a PDF function, and inside that I'll set the file argument to test_plot1.pdf. This is the name of the PDF file that will be created in our working directory, and that the plot or plots will be sent to. Once we run this, we see that this file now exists. For now, it's empty, but it's available for R to write things to it. So if I run the command to generate the histogram again, this time notice it doesn't look like anything happened. The plot didn't show up in my RStudio window. Instead, it's been written to the new file that we created. Now if I try to open that file, I get an error that says the file's damaged. There's one more thing we need to do before we can open the file, and that's to run the command dev.auth. Until we do that, the file remains open for R to continue writing additional plots to. So, if we instead ran code for a second plot, that second plot would be written to a second page in the file. But we're going to go ahead and run dev.auth to turn that device off. And once we do that, we can open the file and we should see the plot that we printed. There are several arguments that can be passed to the devices. You can check those out in the help for each device, whether it's PDF or TIFF or JPEG or whatever. But one I'll highlight is the dimensions of the plot region. For PDF, these are set with the width and height arguments and are defined in inches. So we could open a PDF file with a plotting region 4 inches wide by 5 inches tall by setting the width and height arguments to 4 and 5 respectively. And then write to that file by running code for our plot. And of course, then remember to turn the device off once you're finished with dev.auth. When you're first working on a plot and you're playing around with the code to get it to look the way you want, the default graphical device is probably going to be the most convenient option. But once you get the code for the final version of the plot or plots, these alternative graphical devices can offer some convenient and useful features for writing the final versions of your plots out to a file.